Welcome back to Houston Newsmakers, where we've been talking about the recently completed Texas legislative session with Professors Mark Jones and Brandon Rottinghouse. Let's talk about a couple of the bills that have been passed into law. One of them called constitutional carry, which will give almost any non-felon of legal age the right to carry a gun without a license. Dr. Rottinghouse, gun sales across the country have been going up, so have murder rates. So how and why did this bill gather the steam to pass?
I think it's partly because Republicans have seen effectively a bigger net. They know that the courts are going to back them if they try to expand gun rights. The other part of this is that they know that their base is really excited about this. So if they can expand gun liberties, then they're in good position. And it's not just constitutional carry. It's also the ability to carry in motels. It's also an expanded capacity for school marshals to carry firearms in classrooms. So there's a lot of this going on. It may, though, be a problem for Republicans because it's not so clear that, generally speaking, Texans favor this approach. They generally want to see more background checks. They want to see red flag laws. So politically speaking, Republicans have fed their base, but it could be that many other Texans are left a little bit hungry.
What's your thoughts about that?
Well, I think this was a bill that wasn't on the plans or of either Lieutenant Governor Patrick or Governor Abbott, but Speaker Dade Phelan, because he was getting a lot of pressure from the right for being too accommodating with Democrats, sort of pulled a fast one on the Lieutenant Governor and sent this rapidly through the House to the Senate. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, who always has run to the right of the speakers, particularly Joe Strauss a while back, found himself pressured. He tried to block this bill by saying he didn't have the votes, but there was so much pressure from the base that he felt compelled to push it through. So I think, as Brandon mentioned, this is a bill that made it through and is now law of the land, but it isn't a bill that's supported by a majority of Texans. A majority of Texans want to see more restrictions on guns, not less. And this, if we have any shooting between now and November of 2022 that involved handguns as part of this bill, then that's going to come back to haunt Republicans.
Dr. Rottinghouse, to talk about the Speaker and the conflict between him and Lieutenant Governor, how did the Speaker do in his first session, and have we not seen this kind of infighting amongst the Republicans quite like this in a while?
It's been decidedly negative, I think, for both. I don't think Dan Patrick has met a speaker that he liked. In fact, we now see kind of basically a very unhappy family reunion where Republicans were infighting because of questions about deadlines, like you showed in the package a moment ago. I think that Phelan has been done an adequate job, and that is to say that he's given Republicans the priorities they wanted. He's allowed for Democrats to be committee chairs. He's allowed for some of these moments to be able to be slowed down, like we talked about with respect to the voting rights bill. So there are, I think, a lot of hurt feelings, but at the end of a session, sometimes that's just the way to go. But I do think that the race for the next speaker is going to be more competitive than the last one. So I don't know that Phelan will be somebody who's running by himself. He'll probably have some opposition because there are Republicans who didn't like the way he handled his business. He's made Democrats uncomfortable who all supported him in this. So I think we are going to see a bit more friction coming before the next legislative session.
Dr. Jones, the heartbeat law is now in effect as well, which was certainly one of many, like other Republican legislators. Any shock about that bill, or is this just a trek toward trying to get the Supreme Court to weigh in on Roe versus Wade?
Well, I mean, that's the heartbeat bill would ban abortions effectively at 6 weeks, which means that it's patently unconstitutional and doesn't come close to passing constitutional muster, which it was symbolic for the base. It's pretty much costless for the Republican Party because they passed legislation the base likes. They also passed a ban on abortion if Roe v. Wade is overturned. None of that's going to happen, so therefore the base is happy, but then they don't lose any votes in the center because the reality of the access to abortion isn't going to change because of this legislation.
In the time we have left, tell me what, out of this legislative session, which one or two bills that passed were most surprising to you that we should know about?
Well, I'd say it's surprising. I'd focus on SB 3. That was the weatherization omnibus bill. It passed with bipartisan support, but what at least maybe it isn't surprising, but disappointing is that it's toothless. It's not going to make the electric utilities or natural gas companies do anything really that they wouldn't otherwise do, which means that despite that record winter freeze with Winter Storm Uri, the legislature did not pass any legislation that really is going to require electric generators, transmission companies, natural gas pipelines, to do anything to prevent it in the future. So if we have another freeze like Uri in the winter of 2022, we're likely to have similar problems. Likewise, we could even have problems later this summer. So that was, I think, a real failure. Yes, they passed legislation, but the lobbyists for the utility companies were just so strong that nothing really substantial passed.
Dr. Rottinghouse, you?
I agree with Mark, and to echo what he said, I think that the ledge focused more on red meat over reform efforts, and I think that's going to come back to bite them. There are a lot of things that have been left undone in terms of the policy issues that are facing the state. One surprise to me was the sort of non-expansion of medical marijuana. This was a bill that would have allowed for an expanded amount of THC and for extended number of conditions, and that got scaled back a little bit. So there's a small expansion, but not a big one. So I was a bit surprised by that, but a lot of bipartisan legislation didn't get through. One, though, piece of bipartisan legislation that did get through was that we can now get liquor to go. So your margaritas can be delivered to you, and that's, I guess, one big plus.
Liquor to go on the way to study political science. Thank you, Professors Mark Jones, Brandon Rottinghouse. Thank you so much for being with us today. Always looking great to your insight going forward.